up, everyone? How's everyone doing? It's Jonathan Mathis, the sports judge. Welcome to my sports channel. Man, look at here. I'm so over these NBA playoffs. You know, I find the NHL playoffs more exciting than the NBA playoffs. These NBA playoffs have been uninteresting. They have been boring as hell. Yet I still tune in because I love playoff basketball, right? I love the NBA playoffs, but this Boston Celtics and Miami Heat series hasn't quite lived up to its billing. I expected these two teams to, um, make things more interesting, keep the games close, and we're seeing blowouts. It's either the Celtics blowing out the Heat or vice versa. It's the Heat blowing out the Celtics. It has not been a competitive game in this series, and that's not good for the NBA. I mean, because I turned the game off. I got so bored, I went back to watching hockey. I want to see some competitive, tense, tight finishes. There hasn't been anything thrilling. There hasn't been anything that, makes you, you know, hold your breath towards the end of the game. And usually I'm sitting watching the game, I'm biting my nails. And I haven't bit my nails once in this series. And tonight the Miami Heat, they didn't show up at all. I mean, they looked lifeless from the start. They had a historically bad game offensively. Like, they were historically bad. I mean, they're gonna be in NBA history books for this one. And on the negative side of history, it was atrocious. It was a pathetic excuse for a basketball team. I mean, it was they looked pathetically awful. The Miami Heat. They looked pathetically awful. It was a terrible basketball game. Terrible. They got their asses blown out. They got humiliated. You know, and I mean, this series has had many twists and turns. It has had unexpected developments. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's just been a crazy series. And on Monday night, it was bad for the Miami Heat. It was good for Boston, but it was bad for the Miami Heat. It was very bad for the Miami Heat. They fell behind 18-1, you know, and they found themselves trailing by as many as 32 later on. The Heat just failed to capitalize, you know, um, this time falling 102-82 on the Celtics home floor. And the Celtics, man, they beat them up pretty bad. They gave them a few black eyes. They gave them some lacerations to their face. They gave them some bumps and bruises. Man, they roughed them up pretty good. I know the Heat players are feeling this one. I know they're feeling this one. You know, and I mean, this is a true indication of how how uncompetitive this series has been. And it clearly got away from the Celtics. They did not. It clearly got away. I'm sorry, not from the Celtics. It clearly got away from the Miami Heat. And the Boston Celtics controlled the game from start to finish. They was in full control of the game. And I mean, they set the tone early. And this is looking like a 7-game series, but it doesn't look like there's going to be a close game in this series. It will be very amazing if this series astonishingly goes 7 games, considering how these games have been. It would be crazy, insane if this series goes 7 games when we have yet to see a great game in this series. And then you look at the Western Conference Finals, and the Warriors are up 3-0 against the Dallas Mavericks. You know, and I mean, we want to see some competition. You know, this is what the playoffs is all about. But there's been there's either been extreme highs for the Celtics, while there's been extreme lows for the Heat, and then on the other night there's been extreme lows for the Celtics, while there's been extreme highs for the Heat. But no Heat starters scored in double figures. That was the problem. They were historically bad offensively. You know, and all 5 of their starters were pulled by the start of the fourth quarter because there was no point to even have them on the floor. I mean, they were getting demoralized so bad. You know, they got completely obliterated. And, you know, they didn't play with any heart. They didn't play with urgency. They damn sure didn't bring the energy. You know, and I mean, that was just the difference for the Miami Heat. You know, and Jimmy Butler, the Miami Heat's best player, who sat out in the second half of Saturday's victory with knee pain, only settled for 6 points on a horrendous 3 of 14 shooting. And he didn't even get to the free throw line. You know, usually this guy gets to the free throw line, but on this night, he didn't get to the free throw line. Then Bam Adebayo, who had the performance of his life in the previous game, went off for 31 points on Saturday, was limited to 9 points. Where was he? I talked about him being the factor. I talked about him being a critical piece to their puzzle. You know, I just gave him praise for his showing in the previous outing. He was everything that the Miami Heat needed him to be. That wasn't the version of Bam Adebayo tonight. We saw one who was inconsistent, one who couldn't score, who couldn't buy a basket, who couldn't get any shot that he wanted, who wasn't as aggressive and as assertive as he was in the last game. The Miami Heat, they didn't play well. And Pat Riley had that disgusted look on his face. They showed him several times during the game. Alonzo Mourning, of course, sitting next to him, had that pitiful look on his face as well, as if this team could play a lot better than this. They had no heart tonight. Basketball surely wasn't on their mind tonight. And then point guard Kyle Lowry, who's just getting back in the mix. It was only his second game tonight after missing 8 of the previous 10 games with a hamstring injury. Only had 3 points on 1 of 6 shooting. For the Miami Heat, the scoreboard had only 1 point. There was only 1 point on the scoreboard to start this game. 1 point. And I felt like they were stuck on 1 point forever. And it didn't seem like they was going to score for a very long time. They finally managed to get the 4th point in the game thanks to a 3-pointer from Victor Oladipo, the only guy who really showed up for the Miami Heat tonight. And Tyler Hero, he took the place of Tyler Hero, by the way, because Tyler Hero was sidelined by a groin strain. This could have been a lot different had he came off the bench, because he provides that source of energy for his team. He's that spark plug off the bench, and sometimes he can elevate those around him, and his energy is so contagious that it brings a lot to the team, and sometimes it brings the best out of everyone else on the floor. That's the kind of impact that Tyler Hero has on the Miami Heat. But the Heat bench was limited. Victor Oladipo did finish with 23 points. There was no excuse for this. No excuse whatsoever. No excuse whatsoever, and you had to take advantage tonight because the Celtics, I don't know. I felt like this was the game that you had to steal on the road. But it was Jason Tatum who had the big night. Jason Tatum had a bounce-back performance. He was flawless tonight with 31 points. In the last game, he only managed to score 10 points. It was, a performance that didn't meet his standards. And I kind of expected for Tatum to respond the way he did. Outscoring the Heat's entire starting lineup by 13 points with the way he played tonight. So, you got to give him a lot of credit. But this Miami team, man, Miami started out game 4 missing its first 14 shots. Its first 14 shots and fell behind by 17 points in the process. And they only had 1 point through 6 minutes. And they were able to finally end this dreadful drought of theirs. But it just never got off to a great start for the Miami Heat. And Boston had already worked up to a 14-point lead before you knew it. The lead had ballooned to double digits, and the game, just completely took a turn for the worse. It was a disaster for the Miami Heat. Putting up just 1 point in the first 8 minutes of play. And by the way, I'm saying they're in the history books for this because that's the fewest points from a playoff team in the last 25 years of the league. And to make matters worse, wait till you hear this one. Miami, the 11 points Miami totaled in the first quarter were the fewest in franchise history. And the Heat finished the night just shooting 33.3% from the field and 38.9% from three-point range. Terrible. Terrible. But, I mean, you know, this series has been an utter disappointment. It really has. Because I thought these games would be hard-fought battles. You know, there was so much anticipation coming into this series. You know, and we had spoken highly of the Miami Heat. We talk about how complete this team is. We talk about how they have so much depth and how they have a lot of talent and all the offensive firepower. Well, none of that mattered tonight because they clearly didn't show up. And this series has gone back and forth, but like I said, it's either Miami outscoring Boston or Boston outscoring Miami. That's how it's been. That's the kind of contest it's been. So, I mean, I don't know. I I don't know, but I know it's been a pretty boring series. One series that can put you to sleep. We'll see what happens in the next game. I do think both teams are going to ride it out to 7 games. And game 7 might be a blowout. The way the series is going, game 7 might even be a blowout itself. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it if game 7 I wouldn't doubt it if game 7 is the biggest blowout in NBA history. The way this series has turned out. But I'll see you guys later. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. You know, to keep up with me, you guys can follow me on Instagram, SportsJudge85. You guys can also follow my fan page on Facebook, The Sports Judge. You guys can follow me there too. And you guys can keep up with any content by hitting the subscribe button. I'll see you guys sometime tomorrow. I'll be back to chat it up again. Have a good night, everyone.